The Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke.
Glory to you, O Lord.
One day, when Jesus was praying in seclusion and his disciples were with him, he put the question to them, "Who do the crowd say that I am?" "John the Baptizer," they replied, "and some say Elijah, while others claim that one of the prophets of old has returned from the dead. But you, who do you say that I am?" he asked them. Peter said in reply, "The Messiah of God." He strictly forbade them to tell this to anyone. "The Son of Man," he said, "must first endure many sufferings, be rejected by the elders, the high priests, and the scribes, and be put to death, and then be raised up on the third day." Sisters and brothers, the Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, O Lord Jesus Christ.
"Blessed be the Lord, my rock," is today's response of today's responsorial psalm in today's liturgy, that is the Friday of the 25th week in ordinary time. "Blessed be the Lord, my rock," taken from the book of Psalms, chapter 144, verses 1 to 4. And that should always be instilled in our minds and hearts as we continue without any assurance when this pandemic will end. It should always be instilled, my dear friends, in spite of the day-to-day uncertainties, anxieties we experience in this life caused by COVID-19 pandemic. Let us never forget today's response, "Blessed be the Lord, my rock." And today's gospel message, my dear friends, in today's liturgy, taken from the Gospel of Luke chapter 9, verses 18 to 22, describes to us Peter's profession of faith in Jesus on behalf of his member and fellow apostles. Luke writes and tells us today, Jesus was praying in seclusion, and the disciples were with him, led by Peter. We can imagine, my dear friends, Jesus praying quietly, even though his disciples were with him. And then St. Luke writes further, there and then, while he was praying, Jesus asked his apostles first the question, "Who do crowds say that I am?" And the second question was addressed to them, the apostles present, "And you, who do you say that I am?" And Peter, talking and speaking on behalf of the other disciples, said, "You are the Messiah of God." Peter could not have come up with those words, "You are the Messiah of God," if Peter, like the other apostles with Jesus at that time, were not touched by Jesus praying in seclusion, praying quietly. Peter could not have come up with the answer, "the Messiah of God," if Peter, along with the other apostles, have not remembered the good life of Jesus, and they were witnesses to that. Peter could not have come up with the answer, "You are the Messiah of God," had Peter and the other disciples not remembered how Jesus healed the sick and how much compassion Jesus had on people who are suffering. And reflecting on this background that Peter went through before his response, "You are the Messiah of God," The faith of Peter deepened to the extent that there and then he could recognize Jesus for what he really was, the Messiah of God. And talking about Peter's response to the question, "And who do you say that I am?" And Peter said in reply, "The Messiah of God." As a background then, my dear friends, at the time, many of the Jews were looking for a political Messiah. They were dreaming of a leader that could make the nation Israel number one in the world. As a background before Peter's response, "You are the Messiah of God," many of them, scribes, Pharisees, Jews for that matter in general, they were praying for a Messiah who could catapult their nation Israel into the position of international power and prestige. And Jesus would like to correct the wrong notions. Jesus then had to re-educate the people to the true nature of the Messiah. Until he could re-educate the people to the true nature of the Messiah, he could not reveal himself and proclaim himself as the Messiah. My dear friends, Jesus has come to establish a spiritual kingdom and not a material kingdom. Jesus has come to wear the crown of thorns and not to wear the crown of gold. So then let us ask ourselves today, do we tend to remake Jesus into our own image and likeness, as did the Jews in his time? Thinking Jesus as a political Messiah, considering him as the leader who could make Israel number one in the world, thinking that Jesus would be the Messiah who could catapult the nation into what we call a position of international power and prestige. Jesus had to explain to them. And do we also fall into the temptation today that we tend to remake Jesus into our own image and likeness? And yet, for all we know, the answer of Peter was correct. You are the Messiah of God. You would suffer and endure many sufferings and pains, and would be put to death, and on the third day will be risen from the dead. Stand.